So I'm down here at Tower Bridge and I want to get a photo of it. Now, it can be a bit tricky because the sky is quite bright and there's some dark areas as well. Our eyes, or our brain, is very good at dealing with that, the difference between the bright and the dark. And we can see details in the clouds and we can see what's in the shadows as well in the dark areas. However, that doesn't help the camera. The camera can't deal with that in quite the same way. So my iPhone deals with this quite well, and there's other smartphones that do as well. This is an iPhone 15 Pro, and it has something called high dynamic range, and it switches it on by default. So that actually increases the dynamic range on the camera. So things like in the clouds, you will be able to see more detail, and in the shadows, you're going to be able to see more detail in there as well. But I want to do this with my mirrorless camera, and this is where it becomes a bit of a problem because it can't deal with it very well. I can get a nice photo, but I want to get that high dynamic range as well. And this applies if you've got a DSLR as well. So any of these cameras, you need to switch on a setting in there called high dynamic range. And I do it in my camera by just going into the menu, and then I'm going to go across. I'm in the camera tab at the top. I'm just going to go across here to HDR mode. This could be different in your camera, but on the EOS R5, it's in tab number 5 in the camera tab. Go to HDR mode. I can now turn it on. You can see adjust dynamic range. I'm going to switch it on. I'm going to go into auto. It's going to decide the 3 different exposures. I could tell it to just do 1 stop higher or lower and the same 2 stops or 3 stops. Let's go for auto. I normally find that works. The other one I'm interested in is continuous HDR. So if I take this photo, it's going to take 3 photos and then it's going to go back to normal mode. If I want to keep it there, just go into here and choose every shot. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to stay in 1 shot only. I did use that a lot though. I was in Italy last year and it was very bright and I wanted to get a lot of the photos using this high dynamic range. So I did leave it in there for a lot. Auto align the image. It's going to align the image up when you actually create the final HDR image, but that's not really important because we're going to put that into Lightroom, but do try and keep the camera as steady as possible. If you can, prop yourself against something or put it on a tripod, even better. And then save source images. It's going to do all images. So it's going to take the 3 images and then it's going to create a 4th one. Now I'm in RAW, so that's going to save 3 RAW images and it's going to create a JPEG. So if you've got it set to JPEG, it's going to create 4, the 3 that are the different exposures, and then the 1 that's the high dynamic range. You can still put that into Lightroom, but quite honestly, doing it in RAW is so much better. So let's take our picture. So I'm back at my desk, I've got Lightroom open, I've got the photos loaded from this HDR shot that I did. You can see here that I've got the photo that the camera merged together. You can see in the left-hand side here next to the picture, it's the JPEG file. So I'm keeping this information open for you so that you can see it here. And it thinks that it's at 1/500th of a second, f8 and ISO 160. And it's okay, and I could fiddle around here maybe with the exposure, the contrast and the highlights, but you probably know that the JPEG, although I can do a lot, I can do more with the RAW file. So that is straight out of the camera. Next to it, to the right, let me just move across. These are the 3. These 3 here are the photos. You can see I've got a 1-star rating on them. I've got them highlighted here. The first one, let me click on it, is the one that is slightly underexposed. So that's dealing with the sky. I've not done any processing on this, by the way, no adjustments to exposures. This one is the one that is overexposed, so it's dealing with the shadows. You can see more detail in the shadows here and here. If I go back to this one, you'll see it's all very dark there. And then in the one that it considers the normal shot, it's quite dark here, not really showing much of the detail and so on. So I'm going to merge these together. How do I do it? Well, I'm going to click on the first one and then I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click on the last one and it will highlight all of them in between. I could have used the Control key on Windows or the Command key on the Mac to just individually do each of these. So if I've got this one here, click on the first one, hold down Command or Control, and we'll get the others there. Okay, so now I'm going to create an HDR photo from this. So I'm going to the photo setting at the top. So I'm in the develop module and I'm going to come down to photo merge, and you've got an HDR here with 3 dots. I'm just going to click on that. It'll take a moment to work it out. It'll create a preview for me. And you see it's got auto align. So if I moved, and I probably moved even a fraction, even if it was just handheld and I was trying to keep steady. Auto settings, it's automatically adjusted the exposure and things if I switch those off. So switch off that, it does that. Auto align, I can't really see much of a difference. It did crop in here when I did the auto align, so it must be removing something. So the deghosting, sometimes if there's parts of a semi-transparent part of the image and that overlaid and you get this kind of ghosting around it, you might want to check on it. I'm just zooming in here. Not zoomed in a lot, but I might just be able to see that it's got any ghosting there. If you're worried about it, you do it. You can always come back here and add these in to kind of show it. I've got none here. If I click on low, is it going to show me anything? Because it should show me an overlay. It's taking a bit of time to do it. Yeah, there's a bit here and a bit there. Probably not going to affect it too much. I'm going to leave that on. I'm going to leave that on. Let's hit merge. This can take a moment, depends on how fast your processor is. And it's going to create a new image. It's going to create what's called a DNG file, which is a raw version made by Adobe. And there it is. It's come up here. You can see it's number 9 here. I'm going to click on it. Okay, so that's the HDR that it's done here. And let me just have a look at the HDR here. That's out of the camera. Let's compare the two of them side by side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here on my reference view. Let's go for the side by side. I'm just going to click and drag this one to here. And you can now see this is on the left, the camera version, and this is the one done by Lightroom. I think the one in Lightroom looks better. I'm going to go back to my loop view just by clicking over here. And now, because this is in RAW, I could do some things in here. So I could adjust the exposure. And if you've watched any of my other tutorials, I could actually select the sky and do more with that. So let me click on masking, click on sky, and I could now adjust the exposure a bit or the contrast. And I can use brushes to bring up some more. Maybe I want to use another one. Let me choose brush here. Let me make that bigger. I'm just using the square brackets to increase it and decrease the size. Left one decreases it and right one increases it. So I've got that. Let me just now change the exposure here. So you see you've got quite a bit of latitude of doing stuff. So if you want to see the detail, that's where it is. So there you go. That's what you can do with HDR. This is what happens when you put it into Lightroom, and it works really well here. You can see it's done a great job. Get down to London Bridge. If you want to know when the bridge is going to open, you can go to their website, Tower Bridge, just search for it, and you can see times that it's going to open. It knows well in advance, and it's quite a sight to see the bridge open. Thanks for watching. If you do like this, please do like, share, and subscribe, and come back for more.